And then if I remember right, is it the killer whale next?
I I'm drawing a blank on the killer whale. Unless that scene's not memory.
It washes up on the beach with the shark bite on it.
Yeah.
I
I'm
can't
drawing a
remember where
blank
that
on that
was.
one for some reason. Was that in the original?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't. To be
I
honest,
I
I
know
don't remember
it
that.
was before Hooper comes in
Okay,
into
so
the
it
film.
must have been.
So basically, there's a scene where a small killer whale washes up. It's clearly been bitten by something with a pretty big mouth, and that's where you get the introduction of bite radius and
Yeah,
understanding
yes.
that. And I think that's why the scene was important in the film was
Mm,
because we get kind of that introduction of the concept of bite radius, which is just like how they find in any kind of victim which has a bite mark like a dog or anything where they're trying to match basically the dental palate to the wound to try and figure out what it could have been that caused that wound. And I mean,
mm,
obviously, when you see the actual shark, you can really determine that it probably wasn't Jaws that killed that thing because that was a much smaller wound than the mouth of that shark that we're going to be dealing with. But
mm.
again, it's introducing the concept and kind of showing that there is some murder going on here.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
a short scene, but I think one that's pretty important.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just can't remember where exactly it lines up
Yeah,
in
I
the
don't either for
timeline of the
some
film.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we have next? We have
This is where we get introduced to Hooper.
yes. So
So, yeah,
Hooper's great. He's a young kid who obviously has some experience. He's from is it the Oceanographicers Institute for
Institute. Yeah,
Institute, yeah.
yeah.
And so Brody calls him for some help and really I think some backup and direction more than anything
Mm.
else because he doesn't know how to deal with this. He's really out of his element here and he's looking for some experts. So they call him in and right away he's getting a taste of the town because the town is they're all fired up, they're all going to be the one to claim that reward. You're not going to have to pay quit 10 grand, we'll get them for two.
Yeah.
We're bringing bombs, we're bringing guns, we're going out in our little dinghies and rowboats, and everybody's just on fire as the Darwin Awards would lead you to believe that people would do in real life.
Yeah. And I don't think it's explicitly mentioned, but maybe you could figure it out from the credits. I think this huge guy helps Hooper out of his boat to get up on the dock. And I think that's supposed to be Ben Gardner
I do believe it is. Yeah, played by
because
Craig Kingsbury.
yeah, and he's like, "Oh, hello, young feller," and he's huge compared to Cooper,
Yeah.
and and yeah, and so yeah, you're right. Like Cooper comes on, and there's all these people with obvious idiots just thinking they can go out and do whatever to get the shark and get the reward. And Brody's trying to deal with all this stuff, and he just, as an aside, tells Hooper, "Can you tell those guys in the boat, they're overloading that boat?" And so Hooper meekly is like, the officer said to remind you, you're to tell you you're overloading, and they're just like, and then he's like, "Oh, can you tell me if there's a good hotel or restaurant on the island?" And they go, "Walk straight ahead," like
Right into the
walking off the
water, yeah.
dock. And he just turns around and goes, "Oh, they're all gonna die."
This is the shark hunting equivalent of 70s parenting. I mean, there's just no thought put into it whatsoever. If this movie were filmed today, I mean, this scene would have to be completely different, right? You'd be Googling it, you'd be asking Chat GPT what's the best way to kill a shark. You'd be
Yeah.
doing all kinds of things. Here, they're just reacting without any thought whatsoever. They're bringing explosives. They're like, oh, I could just shoot it with a shotgun and it'll kill it. I mean, granted, to learn about sharks in 73 or you'd have to go to a library and look at the encyclopedias or
Yeah.
find a book like Brody did, but certainly you're not going to get hunting techniques out of those books.
Yeah. It's just, but it's great. And just again, the casting of these people, they look like your local guys that would, $2,000. Yeah,
Hmm.
we got a small boat, we'll go
Yeah.
out there, we'll do our thing or whatever. I think the guy with the dynamite has like a Budweiser hat
Yeah.
on.
Right.
um it's just great. And then there's a scene, just this quick scene I love, where Brody's in like a little shack next to the dock, and he's on the phone or something, and he's trying to get his deputy's attention. He's just outside the window,
Yeah.
and he picks up like some, I don't know, washers or nuts or something, and throws it at the window, and the deputy just turns around and waves, like he's
Right.
like,
Like
I
I
just
just wanted to
wanted
say
to
hi.
say hello, but
Right.
he's like, no, come in here.
Right. The other thing that was like a subtle subtext to this is I think that Hooper gets there, he's looking around going, oh my God, everybody here is an idiot, and I think that helps him cling to Brody a little bit more because he's found somebody with some intelligence. And
Yeah,
fortunately, that's the guy that he has to work with because he's probably thinking, "Oh my God, what have I gotten myself into here? These people they're gonna die." And I don't know anything about dynamite, but I don't know if you can light a fuse and drop it in the water and that fuse doesn't go out, or if it's a special like waterproof fuse that I don't know anything about it, but that is an interesting choice to go shark hunting.
yeah, yeah.
Just stay
um
here a second, light your fuse.
yeah,
Throw it in the water, try and get your boat away from it without the shark moving. I mean, the implementation it would take to make that work is pretty questionable at best.
yeah. And then Brody says to the deputy, look at, these are your people, go out and talk to them. And he's like, these aren't people from around here, they're from all over the place, but
Yeah.
just a bunch of idiots.
Hmm.
But also, again, so the way Brody was introduced, the way Quint is introduced, and now the way Hooper is introduced, great and just sort of immersive. There's all this
Yeah.
crap going on, and then this guy shows up. It's like, oh, you're the guy we called. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, because Brody's like, who are you?
Right. Yeah.
Like, and he doesn't even equate that this could be, the shark expert,
Hmm.
because he's so young too.
Right. But it also
Yeah.
gives us an immediate sense of he's intelligent. I mean, we know where
Yes.
he's from, but he's also like, I'm smarter than all these people around me. So you kind of get that sense right off the bat that you're dealing with somebody who deservedly should be called for something
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, they they briefly show the people going out, and they're all like smashing into each other and yelling at each other,
Mhm.
and then the Ben Gardner guy says, wait, wait till we get them out into the shallows, into the rock pile. They'll wish their mothers never met their fathers.
Right. Like some of the background dialogue in this movie is just amazing,
Yeah, yeah,
And I think about, that's such a typical male thing, right? You've got the ego, like we're going to be the ones out of all of these boats out here, we're going to be the ones that are smart enough to catch the shark, and you're just as dumb as everyone else.
yeah. So then Hooper goes. He wants to see the remains of the victim, and that scene I always thought was a little. I don't know. He's sort of describing what's going on, and he's also getting ill while he's
Mhm.
looking at the remains or whatever. But then he's just like, "This was no boating accident
Right. Yeah.
at the coroner, and did you notify the Coast Guard and all this
But
stuff?"
how
Yeah.
many how many days old is that arm at this point? Or is he looking at the kid? Oh, he's looking at no, did they have
No, it's the
remains?
arm, and he takes it out of the fridge, the
Okay.
coroner. So, but it looks like one of these like 1930s fridges too. It's got the like
Right.
condenser on the top or
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, not a lot of modern upgrades on Amity Island.
yeah, yeah.
And
But
Amity,
obviously
as you
that,
know, means friendship.
yeah, yeah. But then he lifts the arm up, and that's where like, oh, so now we got the fake arm,
Mhm.
and yeah, that, I mean, it was pretty gruesome or whatever,
Yeah.
um he's just like that. I thought was a little unrealistic, like lifting up the arm and saying, this is what happens when
Yeah.
whatever large
Right.
predator or whatever, like, yeah.
Yeah, that was a
But that
little
was for
bit
art. that was for our enjoyment, not the rest of the people in the room.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
the coroner's seen it, and so has Brody. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Right.
yeah,
Right. I also felt he was a very descriptive for like when you look at the arm when they first discover it, it's pretty much intact. It just seems to be bitten off and just floated away before the
yeah.
shark could eat it. But then after it's decayed a little bit and they've had it on ice, it's like all of a sudden there's all these issues with it. And he's talking about the radius and all that. I'm like, shouldn't you just really be looking at the spot where it got bit off? Isn't that really the only thing that matters on this whole thing?
Also, he's describing to me more remains than would fit in the little thing they bring out. They bring out the
Yeah.
thing and it looks like, oh, that'll hold an arm. I get it. But then he's talking about the thorax has been cut in mid torso, and I'm like, well, how much is left?
Yeah, that's true
This, I
because
thought it was just the arm, you know?
yeah, unless that's all they just showed us. Like
Yeah,
initially when they walked up, but they didn't really allude to the fact that there was a whole corpse. That's why I
yeah,
was wondering if maybe it was part of the Kittner boy that washed up on shore, but they never really said that either. So yeah, it is one
no,
of those
no,
things that maybe there was something that got cut or they just kind of didn't really think about it.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
possible. But you're right, that does stand out a little bit in the continuity of it all.
yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, Hooper's already like, all right, we got to do something. He's set off at this point, which just fuels Brody because Brody's been wanting for somebody to come and validate him through this whole movie.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think you cut to the scene of the shark that's caught being strung up
Mhm.
and the mouth opening. And what's interesting is it's a real shark that they
Yeah.
shipped up from Florida. Yet a lot of
Mhm.
people say it's like, oh, what's wrong with the teeth and the mouth? It looks fake, which is so funny. It's like
Yeah.
an actual real shark. They went through the trouble. It supposedly smelled real bad
Oh, I'm
already at that
sure.
point.
Yeah.
Um, and then that great extra guy, the heavy set guy, where they're talking, what kind of shark is it? I don't know. And then for Hooper says it's a tiger shark. And the guy's like, oh, what?
What?
Yeah, like what?
Like,
But
like it's
again,
such a shocking name.
yeah,
If he would have said that's a Guggenheim shark or said it in some
yeah,
way that kind of led some weight to it being something extraordinary would have been one thing. But his reaction to like the plainest word was just so amazing and over the top. It's one of those scenes you have to just rewind it and watch it again because it's so funny.
and it's like there's a bunch of stuff about it. It's like it's definitely showing again that these guys are a bunch of yahoos. They have no clue even like
Right.
what they were fishing for or whatever. But also that guy's voice does not match his body. He's one of those
Yeah.
people where it's like he's this big hefty guy and it's kind
Right.
of a little bit effeminate.
Hmm.
What?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, what the hell?
And he seemed a little slow for,
Yeah,
a what like his reaction and his speech pattern was a little bit slow. And yeah, that's definitely a highlight scene, for
and
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
and Brody comes up and he's all happy because he thinks they caught it
Yeah.
at first. And then yeah, Hooper's measuring it, right? That bite radius thing
Hmm.
comes into play. And there's some side conversations going on, and the guys that caught the shark are like not having it, that
Hmm.
it can't be. And it's like, what do you mean? That's a big mouth. I'll shove your head in there.
Right, yeah.
And
Again,
then
the reactions are so over the top.
yeah, yeah.
Like obviously this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe you should just shut up. But no, we don't get that. We get the typical, I'm right. And maybe it was because they wanted the reward. Like I'm just got to
Oh
convince you that
yeah,
this is the right thing because it is a shark. It's the only one that anyone found. So give me my money.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, but again, so that this whole scene sequence is great because then we have the mayor come in again and he's not having it that
Mhm.
Hooper doesn't think this is the shark, but Hooper offers the practical thing to do, which let's cut it open, slow digestive system. And then I'm not sure when the mayor says, well, I'm not going to stand here while you do this half-assed autopsy and see the Kittner boys spill out over the
Mhm.
dock. I was never sure whether he actually believed that when they cut it open that would happen, or was that again him just being in denial and I'm not going to listen,
Yeah.
that this can't possibly be the shark.
I could see both of those possibilities. The thing that struck me about that line was, did he really think they were just going to cut it open right there in front of everybody and not take it somewhere private and do that?
Right, like it's impractical. Like, oh no, right now I'm going to walk up with a knife and just cut it open. I
Right.
mean, obviously, if from a uh, wrongful death or a homicide situation, you would have to try to preserve
Hmm.
evidence and
Sure.
et cetera. So do it in some kind of environment where, yeah, yeah. So that was, yeah, was that just him trying to blow the whole thing off, and
Or we've
hope they
got a
never
shark.
do that.
Yeah, I've satisfied the people. We can go back in the water now, and I don't want to believe that there's anything bigger out there. I don't care what you're saying. We've got a shark. It's our shark. There's only one shark. So I could see it playing a little bit into both. I think a politician's natural instinct is to just say the problem is solved and get everybody, back to business. So I could see that side of it. I could also see the we don't need this happening in front of everybody side of it. But that line has always been a really bizarre standout to me, and as far as
Hmm.
the script goes.
Yeah, yeah,
And then, of course, we get the heartbreaking moment. I would say more so. I think this is a harder part to watch than Mrs. Kittner walking up and down the beach screaming for her son. I think this is a much more difficult scene to watch.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, she comes up and confronts Brody essentially, and I guess it's her husband escorting her. And I was wondering, is that the guy that was complaining about the picket fences being chopped in the beginning? I wasn't
I
sure, but
think it
he's
was.
also older,
Hmm.
so it's like I don't know if they also just didn't want to hire that many actors. So it's just like, well, it's a small town, so yeah, Mrs. Kittner's married to that guy.
Yeah.
And the guy that was talking to Brody on the beach when the Kittner boy was attacked, he he's apparently the husband of the lady who owned the inn, and
Oh, okay.
asked if because she was on the beach talking to Ellen Brody.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, you get these little mixtures of side characters. But again, when she walks up, they look like a much older couple to have a
Yeah.
child that young, and she's
Yeah.
dressed like someone older would mourn, like in a
Yeah.
veil, as opposed to just,
I
I
wondered if
don't
she was
know.
coming from the funeral or if it was one of those things where, a woman would dress in black for what's like 3 days of mourning, one of those type of
Yeah,
like a Victorian tradition or something like that. Because the veil
yeah,
does look very Victorian. So I thought maybe that was the case. I thought it was kind of odd that she walked up in that style of dress unless she did it just to prove a point or just
yeah,
remind you, hey, I want to let you know I'm in mourning when I confront you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because what essentially she says is that, and she blames Brody because, from what she had heard,
Hmm.
a girl got killed on the beach, and Brody knew about it. All true.
Right.
Everything
Yeah.
she says is true, and and you feel justified for her because she doesn't know that the mayor has been preventing Brody from doing all this.
Exactly.
Um, so, and so yeah, the shocking part, it's shocking when she smacks him. It's like
Hmm. Yeah, it really
a
is.
little jump. It
Hmm.
really is. And even Hooper, they show him and he's like taken aback.
Well, he
And
told her to really hit him too, because that was going
yeah,
to be the only way it was going to be realistic. And I mean, I guess they did a few takes of that. So, you gotta do your take and then you gotta wait for that red to kind of subside and then do your other take. So this is going to be a long day, of
yeah.
just trying to get the effect of that scene. But I guess one time she hit him a little too hard and everybody jolted a bit. And of course, that's going to be the take, at least the reaction take that they use.
Yeah, yeah. And can you imagine being the actor and it's like, well, I know this is coming. She's gonna smack me in the face. I keep saying hit me harder, or the
Hmm.
director does, and it's like you gotta keep kind of a straight face until
Yeah.
she hits you. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
how do
tough.
you how do you not just kind of squint your eyes or cringe a little bit knowing that, or brace yourself like knowing that that's coming? That is a real testament to acting, I think, is when people can have such a clean reaction to something that's so obviously planned, but make it look like it really was a spontaneous moment. He had no idea she was about to hit him, and really pull that off with that element of realism. That's impressive to me.
Yeah. And then the mayor the mayor has one little moment of humanity where he's like, he says, "I'm sorry, Brody," you know, but then he follows it up with, "She's wrong." And at that point, the whole audience, along with Brody, goes, "No, she's not." It's
He was right.
like,
She just picked the wrong guy. What he should,
yeah,
if
yeah,
he would have said, "She's wrong, it was my fault," but
exactly.
he's
Yeah.
not going to admit liability.
No, no,
You know.
absolutely not. Yeah.
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 The other thing we forgot to mention too, speaking of Hooper, is that while they wanted kind of mainly unknown people, obviously Robert Shaw was a very well-known actor, but Richard Dreyfuss was not. He had been in, what was it, American Hustle, I think,
It was in American
or
Graffiti was
American
that
Graffiti. Yeah.
after, but also, yeah, there was another movie he was in. I can't remember what it was. Kind of an odd film, I think.
Yeah.
The Apprenticeship or something. I can't remember, but
But I
yeah,
remember he was really
I had
afraid of
never
what would.
seen him before.
Yeah, he
You
was
know,
really afraid of what would happen to his career after this movie came out. Notoriously badmouthed this movie left and right in the press, thinking that it was going to be awful, and worked his ass off to get on Close Encounters because he said, "I need to be in something as quickly as possible." And Spielberg didn't want him for it, but eventually, he landed it. But his ties to this movie are questionable in some ways, and obviously as an actor, you don't want to be bad mouthing movies that you're in, but he did it as a defensive technique. But I appreciate the fact that he's embraced what this movie has done for his career, and he's out doing movies that are parodies of it, and still talking about the movies and telling stories on set with other actors about the movie. I mean, he had his moment, and he's known for being difficult, but he came around, and I can at least respect that.
yeah, yeah,
But a fairly unknown actor coming into this, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so,
they do perform the half-assed autopsy on a fish.
yeah, but before that, they show Brody sitting at his kitchen table, and
Oh
his
yeah,
youngest son, Brody's he's just come off Mrs. Kittner slapping him and telling him off, and he's feeling horrible. And his young son's sitting at the table, and he starts mimicking everything his father is doing, and it's such a sweet scene. And again, did you really need to have that scene in there? No, but it adds to the sort of intensity of the previous scene.
hmm,
um, and then Brody says to the kid, "Give me a kiss." And the kid says, "Why?" Is it because I need it?
right.
And then there's a knock at the door. Hooper comes in, and then there's a little bit of dialogue that sometimes gets lost. But Hooper says, I'd like to speak to your husband, or talk to your husband." And Ellen Brody goes, "Yeah, so would I." Like, he hasn't been talking to her since he got
Right,
home
yeah.
from that thing. And
Which if
yeah,
they would have gone with the book version, it would have been, "Your husband's not home right now, is he?
yeah,
Let's go
let's
to the
get it
bedroom."
on. Yeah.
Yeah. But there, I don't know if Mark, but that scene with his son was completely spontaneous. That was not part of the script. It was just something
Oh,
the kid
really?
was doing. He was mimicking Brody, and then Spielberg was like, "Grab the camera, let's film this," and
What
that
a
was all spontaneous, and I think it worked. It worked brilliantly. I mean, do you need it? No, but I think we needed a little bit of humanity, and for Brody to have a connection with reality, and showing
mm,
that he does have an importance and value. So I think when you look at it that way, I mean, the scene really does work for the film. But yeah, that was spontaneous.
yeah, yeah, that was great. And then it's just like little things. So Hooper comes in, he brings red and white wine because he doesn't know what they're having for dinner. So obviously they had invited him for dinner.
Well,
And
did they
then
though? Because if they invited him, wouldn't they have said something like, "Hey, I've got my 4th of July roast that we're going to have tonight," or wouldn't they have said, like, alluded to what they were having for dinner?
yeah, I would think so. It's like I almost took it as, did Brody just say that in passing, like, "Oh, you should come over for dinner tonight," and then with everything that happened, he kind of forgot about it,
Yeah,
like
that
didn't
could be,
tell
yeah,
her or whatever. And
right.
then he just shows up, and he's obviously starving because he just takes Brody's plate. He's like, "Is anyone eating this?"
Yeah.
And he just starts eating it,
And
which is
that's why I
funny.
think they didn't invite him, because unless he
Yeah,
just forgot to tell Ellen, hey, by the way, I invited Hooper over for dinner tonight. So there's like a weird, again, one of those, is it this or this kind of thing? You know,
but is it? Yeah, does that add to the sort of more reality of it? Like, well, this
right.
kind of stuff happens. Like,
Yeah.
Ellen seems surprised that there was a knock at the door and who he was, so
Hmm.
she didn't seem to know. But he
Right.
says, but he brings wine like he was invited to dinner.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And she says that great line. So I hear you're in Sharks.
yes, yeah, and this is where Brody starts talking about all the stuff he's learned about sharks. Like
Mm,
they attack in less than 3 feet of water,
yeah.
and the swimmers, mimic the sound of a fish in distress and all this stuff. And yeah, Brody opens up the bottle of wine, and Dreyfus Hooper's like, "Well, you might want to let that breathe." And Brody's just pouring this huge
Yeah,
glass of
he
wine,
doesn't
and he's like,
care.
"Oh, no, never mind." Yeah, yeah. And then that's when, yeah, it's like, you want to go down and cut that shark open, and Ellen says, "Can you do that?" And Brody's like, "Of course I can. I'm the chief of police," in a slurred voice, like he's
But
been drinking. Yeah.
before that, there's something weird that happens because Hooper says, that's why I'm going to go back and tell them you still have a shark problem. And Brody is now kind of taking the side of the mayor and going, don't do that. You don't need to do that. And he he was in
Yeah.
agreement with cutting the shark open earlier, and then he dealt with Mrs. Kittner, and now he kind of doesn't want to believe that there's another shark. He's kind of, really impacted by what she said, and instead of what a police chief would do and get the evidence to verify it, which you would want to do one way or the other, now he's kind of like, I don't want to think that there's anything more going on here, even though he was
Mm.
convinced earlier there was before Mrs. Kittner came by.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you got to sort of put yourself in his shoes with everything
Mhm.
that's going on. I mean, in smaller senses, I know in my work career or something, it's like there's cases where you think you've done everything right or correctly or to your
Mhm.
values or whatever, and then it goes wrong, and then you get blamed for it, even though what you were trying to do would have been the right thing to do, that went
Yeah.
wrong. Like you got overruled or something. It's like you've
Mhm.
had that. And then there's a sense of um just hopelessness in that.
Right.
Maybe that's what he was feeling like. Well, I don't care anymore. I tried to do my thing and I still got crapped on anyway.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And to wrap up Mrs. Kittner, because we do not see her again in the film, there is an interesting postscript to her Jaws story. There is, she went to a restaurant. This is the real life actress. What is her name? Lee Fiaro. And she went to a restaurant and she saw on the menu they had a sandwich called the Alex Kittner. And so, of course, she ordered it, and she told the waiter, I was actually the actress who played his mom in the movie. And he said, really, that's interesting. And he goes in the kitchen, and the kid who played Alex Kittner, which is Jeffrey Voorhees, actually came out because he owned the restaurant. And
Yeah.
so they got to have a little reunion. Of course, she's since passed, but that's kind of interesting. Of all the restaurants she could walk into, happened to be one that he owned. She happened to see that on the menu, and kind of a nice little little bit of closure for them for the because they did have the one interaction on the beach where he wanted to be in the water and she's fighting against him, so they did know each other a little bit, and yeah, I always thought that was a nice little wrap up to their story.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a cool story.
Yeah. So I say, let's get us to the point where Brody and Hooper go to meet Quint, and we'll take a break there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So
So
that's coming up.
before
Yeah.
that,
We've
though,
been
yeah,
running long, but I
yeah.
think I can talk for days about this
Oh, this
movie.
this is this will be a multi-part episode, no doubt about
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
But yeah, so they go down to cut the shark open. And I always wondered if this was realistic or just for effect, but like when they cut the shark open, it almost looks milky, the
Mhm.
stuff, the liquid coming out. And it smells terrible. Brody's like kind of way back in the shot. It's a great way it's filmed, that shot too,
Mhm.
because like you just see a little bit of the body of the shark, and
Yeah.
Hooper's cutting it open. And he starts pulling out stuff. He pulls out like fish. Then there's like a part of a fish, a whole fish, a metal can, like soup can. But then I thought it was a little bit overblown to pull the license plate out.
Mm-hmm.
Where he go, it's kind of funny, and maybe it's a comic relief thing because he's like, before you see what it is, he's like, oh, just as I suspected, it came up from southern waters, and then it's
Right.
North Carolina or South Carolina or something,
Mm-hmm.
the license plate. And
Which
Brody's
is
like, did
funny
it
because the actual shark was from southern waters since they got it from Florida.
Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Brody's like, did he eat a car? And Hooper's like, nah, tiger shark will eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, Hooper's basically like, well, you still got a problem. There's a fish out there with a mouth this big. And then Hooper's like, let's go look for it right now. He's a night feeder, which so far he's been, I guess he killed one victim at night, but it's,
Right. Yeah.
he fed during the day for sure as well.
Well, and they
Um,
probably don't even know about the two guys on the dock because nothing was ever reported
right. Those
or,
guys just like, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, shouldn't somebody have gone to the sheriff's office and gone, my husband is missing and I know there's a shark. He was out late last
yeah,
night and didn't come home.
yeah.
There
Well,
was
those
no
guys
follow up to that
survived
either.
though.
Do we know the other guy got out of the, oh, did he get out of the
Yeah,
water?
yeah,
Oh,
because
he did.
he's
Okay.
like, "Can we go home now?"
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But they probably just didn't want to say anything. The wife's probably wondering what happened to her roast, but
Yeah, she's not. Well, I don't know. On Amity Island, I kind of feel like they would go to the sheriff about
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
stolen out of the fridge or something.
Sheriff, my roast is missing. I know it's those kids that are kicking the fence. We gotta
Yeah,
do something. Yeah. So at this point, Hooper is not letting this go. He's like, we got to do something. We have an opportunity right now. Let's go do it. And I think Brody, I don't know where Brody's at emotionally. I mean, he has had one hell of a day. And I think he's just like, I don't even know what to do. I'm lost. Whatever you say, we're just going to do it. But he's so nervous, so out of his element, steering the boat. He's so uncomfortable even just being in control of the boat. He's really at this point broken down.
yeah, yeah. He's obviously kind of slurring his words. He's been drinking,
Mhm.
and he's talking about how he was frustrated, or burnt out from his career in New York. And it's like, there's never been a murder in this town in 20 years. And one guy can make a difference. It's almost like he's justifying after everything that's happened and getting crapped on that. It's like, no, I guess I could still make a difference or something, but he's pretty broken and yeah, out of
Yeah.
his element. He didn't want to go out. He's like, are you crazy on the water? And it's like, Hooper's like, well, you're not going to find him on the land.
But it's funny because usually when people drink, they become bolder, and you almost would have thought he'd get all fired up and go, "Yeah, let's go get this thing,"
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. But I do like that whole, one man can make a difference on an island when there's only been one murder in 20 years. Like, what difference
yeah.
are you going to make?
Stop the kids from cutting the,
Yeah, that's
breaking
right.
the fence or whatever. But yeah,
What do they call that? The war on karate chopping.
yeah.
Yeah. So they
uh,
go out in the boat, and here's where I think the film really starts to take a turn. I think this is such an important and pivotal scene for setting up everything that comes after.
yeah, yeah. But like, so as they're talking and they go out in the boat, this is where you get a little bit of a background character of Hooper too, and the fact
Mhm.
that he's wealthy. He's a what do they call it? Trustafarian in a sense. I
Mhm.
think that his family is very rich, and it's like sharks are kind of a hobby, and he pays for all this equipment. He has the boat and everything. It's a bigger boat than any boat we've seen up to now. Uh, you know, and yeah, so yeah, they Hooper's like they come across something in the water, and then it turns out it's a boat that's wrecked, and Brody says, hey, that looks like Ben Gardner's boat.
Mhm.
And then Hooper's like, well, I got to check something out, and he starts suiting up to go in the water. And I think the whole audience is like, don't why, go in the water. And even Brody's saying we could tow the boat in,
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah.
But and I thought about what a bad decision it is to go in the water when you're looking for a shark. But they did have the fish finder. So if
Right.
there was anything immediately in the area, I think that's the only reason he actually felt safe enough to do it, was because they would have been alerted if something was in the area. That's the only
Mm.
real justification I can give for that action.
Yeah. I thought either that or it's just a little bit of the confidence of Hooper in
Mhm.
his knowledge and his
Yeah,
skills too. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Because yeah, because we see later he does take extreme measures. So
Yeah.
yeah, but he goes into the boat, and here's a scene that was done again, just another brilliantly shot scene. And if I remember right, I could be wrong about this, but I think this was added after the fact. I think this wasn't originally intended to be shown the way it was. I think they shot this on a lot on Hollywood after the principal production was done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. It's the biggest jump scare in the movie, and
Mhm.
and I think Spielberg said he used to like to sit in the back of the theater and watch people come out of their seats and go back
Yeah.
down when this happened.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it's at night. It's dark. And just the background music just sets you up. Hooper pulls the tooth out and he's looking at it, and you're kind of getting the sense like the music is kind of like the shark attack music, but
Mhm.
not exactly. So you're like, is the
Right.
shark going to come up behind him? And then, yeah,
Well,
what
that's
happens?
that's the beauty of film score, is because you have, in a film like this, you have a piece of music that is your shark music, right? And that means that there is a real danger, versus alternate versions of that, which are not exactly the same, which give you a sense of danger or a different danger, but still not the shark. So
Right.
it all works on such an amazing subliminal level. You've got similar music, but you have a certain shark theme. When you hear the similar music, you're like, oh, there's danger. Is the shark around? Is your response? But all they're doing is saying, hey, this is a potentially dangerous situation. You should be on
Yeah.
alert. And it's
Yeah.
crafted so brilliantly.
Yeah.
This is why you hire a guy like John Williams.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, so there's yeah, Hooper's looking through the hole in the boat where he just pulled the tooth out, and Ben Gardner's head pops out. And I remember a friend of mine, I was 9 years old and talking about the movie later. He had seen it as well, and he said he thought he thought that's kind of what a head probably would look like if it was in the water for a little while too. I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. One thing I've noticed that I didn't notice the first time I saw it, though, that there's actually a loud like shriek
Mhm.
sound effect when the head pops out, which I think makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Uh, um, just gives it that extra jolt
Hmm.
of. I mean, again, it's one of the greatest jump scares in movie history. I
Oh,
think.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
because even though you're anticipating something is going to happen, you don't know exactly when it's going to happen, and you don't know what it's going to be, and you just see this face come out of the darkness with this blank stare on it. And I mean, it's such a powerful moment in film history. And again, you're underwater, you're helpless, you can't just run away, you can't call for help. I mean, again, it's taking people away from safety or away from any aid of any kind, and putting them in that position. And as an audience member, you feel like you're underwater with them, and that's
yeah.
so vital to making the intensity of that really work.
Yeah, and then like even just directly after, so Hooper panics, he drops the tooth, and there's a gurgling noise, like he spit out his respirator or
Mhm.
whatever. He's struggling to get to the surface because he's gasping, and and Brody's up there like, "What's going on?" He points a searchlight at him or whatever, and yeah, iconic scene. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, yeah,
And again, I
fantastic.
like that he comes out of the water to just that pitch blackness. Again, it just gives you that sense of lack of safety. And even though he jumps out, he comes out of the water and he's gasping for air, he's not rushing to the boat, which
Right.
is, because he knows there's no danger there. He knows whatever
Mm,
happened already happened. And you
yeah.
figure at the very least it had been a full day since he got to the island. So when they went out on this expedition to kill the shark, Ben Gardner, it would have been at least one day between the time they went out and then they caught the shark. The Kittner woman comes up, they have dinner, which is at nighttime. It had to
Mm,
be at least a full day. So the shark's already gone,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So now he's just trying to survive and collect himself and, and all that. So then I think they go to, is that when they're talking to the mayor on the beach?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So right after that, yeah, it's a quick cut where like it's almost you mid conversation where Brody's talking about, oh, we found Ben Gardner's boat, and it's like you should have seen him or whatever. So I don't know if I think they towed the boat in or whatever. And then Hooper says, I pulled this tooth out, and it was the tooth of a great white. And then that's where the mayor goes into denial. Now, it's funny to me, it struck me later too. He's denying because Hooper lost a tooth,
Yeah.
and he says he has an accident, he lost the tooth. But there's still the boat, right? They
Right.
towed it in, and Ben Gardner's head.
And
you know,
whoever and all the other people that would have been on that boat with him are apparently gone. He didn't go out
yeah,
by
yeah,
himself. And again, no report to the police. Hey, my husband Ben Gardner didn't come home last night. But
yeah,
the funny thing is they caught a shark, and the mayor could have said, "Well, isn't this just the shark that we caught yesterday?" And
right.
tried to push that point. But there's a funny thing here in the way that if you watch Richard Dreyfuss and you see his face, he's looking down at the mayor's chest because he could not remember the line Carcarian Carcaris,
Oh,
and they had
okay.
to write it on a piece of paper and put it on the mayor's chest. So he actually
That's
looks
funny.
down when he says that line.
That's funny, and it's like to me too. The scene almost seems like it's filmed from below.
Mhm.
Am I getting that right? Certainly,
Yeah.
the end of the scene, and I'm wondering if that's so they could pan up to the billboard.
That's what I
But
think, yeah, because it was shot at a kind of a weird angle because normally you'd like, and maybe also to hide that sign so that they just shot everybody from the top up, and then they show the billboard. And that billboard was great. I love the graffiti on it. But for him to come back to the mayor and go, yeah, that's graffiti, but you know what? That's pretty accurate.
yeah, yeah, there's a bunch of good lines in this whole back and forth. It's like when Hooper gets frustrated, it's like you're gonna ignore this particular problem, so it swims
Mhm.
up and bites you in the ass,
Yeah, and
and
I'm not
then
dealing with a guy that's lining up to be a hot
hot
lunch.
lunch,
Yeah,
and
but
then
this was
oh
another great moment with the mayor where again he showed that fear and jitteriness where he's like, but you don't have the tooth, trying to
right.
almost convince himself that no, you can't prove this to me, and I'm fighting what I believe.
Yeah, and I think he like turns his back on the other characters at
Hmm.
that point.
Yeah,
And then yeah, it's and then yeah, the mayor, there was another point I was going to make about the back and forth dialogue. I can't, oh well, yeah, then Hooper, he kind of goes into technical mode, and he's just describing what a shark like this does. It just swims and eats and makes baby sharks, and
hmm.
it's a perfect machine. And then, which he should have hauled off and hit him when the mayor's just like, oh, you'd love to prove that, get your name in the National Geographic. And
Right, yeah.
Hooper's response is just to laugh hysterically. And
Isn't
then
isn't though
yeah,
that the description that he gives of a shark, isn't that pretty much the description of every animal on the planet that isn't
yeah,
domesticated,
kind of,
like a
yeah,
lion, a hippo, a
yeah,
alligator,
yeah. Yeah, that didn't make that any more menacing than any other animal,
Right,
really.
exactly, yeah.
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 But yeah, yeah. Then the mayor points out that he's just pissed off that they vandalized the billboard
Mhm.
with the dorsal fin and the help shark, and then of course Hooper points out that um, the dimensions are essentially correct with that. but then the mayor's just like, oh, Brody says, well, maybe, maybe we could save August or whatever. You could still save August, if we hire Quint or whatever. And the mayor's just like, August? It's, tomorrow's the 4th of July and we're open for business. And this is going to be the best summer we've ever had.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it
Just
isn't.
that whole between 3 really good actors. I mean,
Yeah.
that scene
Mhm.
um, was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the dynamic of these characters, the fight they have, I mean it's so well acted. You know, you get the intensity, the conviction of each of the characters, the struggle, and there's so much that's incorporated into this scene that I sadly sometimes do get distracted by his anchor suit. But
Yeah.
at the same point, I'm like, this is a really amazing scene. Again, another one where any other actors would have done this differently. I mean, the fear level of the mayor, the conflict that he's got. Props to this guy for bringing so much out in this scene. You know.
Yeah. And again, I think for him to, as an actor, being on a face that you wouldn't necessarily recognize,
Mhm.
um, made it that much more. Can you imagine if he was like a famous actor playing the mayor? I think it just wouldn't have had that impact.
Yeah.
There's certain actors that like they can immerse themselves and
Mhm.
they're believable, but then there's others. It's just like, well, no, that's I don't know.
Yeah, like imagine if they'd have gotten, say, John Travolta or somebody to play the mayor, it would have had a completely different, especially
Yeah.
the John Travolta of 1972.
Well, yeah, young dancing mayor there or whatever, but yeah.
Right, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he was definitely, I mean, the age was appropriate, because you've got to have experience to be a mayor and all that. I mean, the casting of this movie is so well done, except for, like I said, I mean, I don't have anything against the actors that played the Kittners, but that's a little imbalanced. But apart from that, I mean, performance-wise, they really cast at least the principal characters very well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think Ellen Brody, I don't necessarily know that that character would have been a challenging role as an actor. I don't think that she had enough substance to really not be interchangeable.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of her really if you
Yeah.
think about it. Not a lot of dialogue
Yeah.
or
In
whatever.
Jaws 2, she becomes a little more principal, but for this movie, she's an important character because it shows, Brody's loved, he's trusted, he's believed in, and the family dynamic, but her character is really not that big of a key. There's a mention of her later that becomes important, but her physically being in the film is not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So is this I think from here again, problems with the mayor. So let's circumvent the mayor. Let's find a way to try and keep people safe, even though we can't close the beaches. So we're going to keep them open for 4th of July, but we are going to have everybody available, filling up the water, creating a border, doing everything we can to keep people safe.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, they show yeah, a real shot of the ferry arriving on Martha's Vineyard, dumping a bunch of people out like it normally does.
Mhm.
The film, was filmed partially in Martha's Vineyard. Um, I don't know if you know this, there's a little bit of a true crime folklore about that scene. Apparently, sometime shortly after, or maybe even while they were still filming, a woman was found dead on the beach in Cape Cod, I believe. I don't think it was on Martha's Vineyard. I think it was on Cape Cod. And the way she was dressed, it seems like there's a shot of her coming off that ferry in that scene, and they never
Oh
identified
yeah.
who she was. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
this thing, and I think it's subjective or whatever, but
Mhm.
something about like she was dressed the same. She had like a red bandana on or something, and the woman they
Interesting.
found had the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I forgot all about that. But yeah, I did
yeah,
hear something about that at one point, and I think, as far as I know, that's still an unsolved crime.
yeah.
Yeah, very
So,
interesting. But yeah, this is a big scene because this is what is the final push to get us into the last act of the film, because at this point the mayor knows, but he's still like, yeah, but money, yeah, but I got to protect the financial resources of this. And I don't think it's necessarily self-serving of I've got to preserve this so I can maintain my position as mayor. I think he just doesn't know what else to do, and he's just thinking the survival of the island and finances and that. But again, it's like, if you're on the road and you're late and you're driving 75, 80 miles an hour in a 35 to get to your job so that you don't get written up, and you hit a car, well, you're not getting to your job. Now you've hurt people. I mean, it's like, sometimes there are risks that just are not worth it. And we'll come to find out that this was one of them. But I feel like that's where the mayor's at. He's like, I'm late for work. I just got to get there so I don't get in trouble. That's kind of the mentality he's coming in with. Because he also, again, there's no training for this. There's no
Mhm.
like, you get your mayorship and they sit you down and go, okay, here's how to do this job. When somebody gets killed by shark attack, here's how you handle it. I mean, there's no preparation for this stuff. You're just reacting and making decisions.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. And then so this is the point where the author of the book makes a cameo
Hmm.
as a news reporter, Peter Benchley, and he's talking about, the the way he's described it. It sounds like typical news reporter speak, where it's like this pristine, paradise, but it's upset by in the form of a killer shark.
Hmm.
And then the mayor is interviewed. I don't know if he's interviewed by Peter Benchley. I don't know if they show who's doing the news interview, but he's like, "Oh yes, we have caught a large predator that supposedly injured some bathers," and
Right. Yeah.
you're like, so he's like spinning the fact that two people were killed, and it's
Right.
just that they injured some bathers or whatever. Like, talk
Yeah.
about glossing over the fact. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
And
Yeah,
again, if this movie were to be shot today, I mean, at least 80 people would have caught that on their cell phone camera. And the dynamic of this film would not work if it took place in 2025.
yeah, yeah, yeah. um but no one's going in the water.
Hmm.
There, the beach is packed full of people, but no one's going in the water. So what does the mayor do
Well,
next?
I'm sorry, Mark. I just want to add the beach is uncomfortably packed. There was like not a
Yeah.
square foot of walking
Yeah,
area
yeah,
in this
yeah,
at all.
exactly.
So everybody just came out to watch the water instead of let's just stay home and barbecue.
Yeah.
Let's try and find the mystery of where your roast went.
Yeah.
Because that guy didn't come home and admit to taking it. So yeah, uncomfortably packed. And of course the mayor's like, I don't know if he was really well motivated here. What do you think, Mark? Everybody's still at the beach. Yes, they're not going in the water, but they're still at the beach. So I don't know how much this is really affecting the commerce of the island.
I would agree. I this was a little, to me, taking the mayor's character a little too far. Like, people are at the beach. You gotta imagine, if it's a hot day at the beach and it's that packed, some people are gonna go in.
Yeah.
There's some people that just, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. But instead, he doesn't go in himself, because apparently we find out later that his family's at the beach as well.
Right.
But he gets some guy, I guess he's like, I always thought he was like a city councilman, somebody that was kind of under the mayor's thumb.
Yeah.
And he says, no one's going in the water. And the guy's trying to say, well, I just put on suntan lotion and, this and that. So they go in, but instead of just the guy, it's like him, his wife, and they take the kids, and
Right.
they got a raft, and they're looking around like they're scared out of their minds going in the water.
Like, this is the
Um,
ultimate peer pressure decision, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I was like, just, hey, guy, go in yourself. You don't
Right.
take the rest of the family with you.
Yeah.
It's like, but he's like, I'm not going in alone. I guess,
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, at best, you hope to only get injured at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting scene, and but why did they take the kids? Like, if you want to satisfy your friend, just like go in the water, make your appearance. You see other people are going in, and you get out. Like that would
Yeah.
be the thing to do, right? At best. But no, he's like, ah, let's just all go in. We're not terrified or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another strange decision
And,
in the movie.
but the filming of that is cool because it's kind of extreme close-ups on their face going
Yeah.
in the water.
Mhm.
Just I guess to show how terrified they are.
Yeah.
But it works to the mayor's delight. The people, everybody else starts going in, which is like kind of a cool commentary on mob mentality too.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
oh, it must be safe because everyone else is doing it. I don't know.
The lemmings that we are.
Yeah.
Not knowing if those people made a good decision or not. Like, oh, it's not like, hey, is it okay? Should I check with somebody?
Yeah.
Nobody's stopping them. It's like, nope, they did it, so we can do it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I wonder if there was anyone sitting on the beach. It's like, what are these people doing going in the beach? Like, are they out of their mind?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Uh,
And it doesn't pan out well for anybody because this is where we get the boys in the water with the fake fin. But I was confused because the kid looks like Brody's son, but it's not his son, is it?
it is not
Okay.
because he only has two sons.
And they're both in the pond.
They never really like sort of establish how many kids he has directly, but it's like just the two kids. And but yeah, one of them does look like him. I assume it was a different actor. Right?
Yeah, that's where I got confused because
Yeah.
it's like I don't think the
Were
police
they
chief's
brothers or
son would
something?
be
Yeah.
pulling pranks when there's like all these people out
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
But he does look
Although
very similar. Yeah.
although I remember like the worst bully delinquent in my neighborhood was the son of a cop. So
Oh,
yeah.
well, there you go.
Yeah. So I don't know. That could have been realistic, but
Yeah,
yeah.
fair,
Yeah.
fair. Yeah.
But yeah, so basically this Finn, which I don't know the first time I saw the film whether I thought there was something shady about it or did I actually feel that the shark, but I think there's like again, there's no musical clue
Hmm.
that it's there. But then yeah, so people start panicking and they don't really they don't elaborate on how many people were injured in that melee of trying to get out of the water.
Right.
But Brody's yelling to the lifeguards, don't blow the whistles because he, I guess, doesn't want people to panic, but they are, and people are
Mhm.
getting trampled. And, you know, there's like a scene of like an old guy. It's like every man for himself. He just like dumps these kids off a raft. It's
Yeah,
like,
like wow.
which is realistic. I mean,
Yeah. I
it's
think
in a panic.
that's the thing about the scene that I think is amazing is that this is a very realistic portrayal of what I think would happen.
Yeah.
I was in the film Jason Bourne, and I shot on that film as an extra for one day. And for those of you that have seen the film, there's the big scene in at the conference where the guy is up at the podium and he's giving his speech and he's talking about it and he gets shot. Matt Damon comes, bursting in and doing his thing. I was part of the crowd that dispersed when that happened. And we shot that, I want to say, probably 10 to 12 times. And sometimes it was an hour in between takes while they were looking back, and they had multiple camera angles. It was I mean, that's really all we did that day was shoot that one scene. And there were 3,000 of us. I think it was 3,000 if I remember right, and like 2,000 of us were extra, no, 3,500. 1,500
Wow.
were SAG actors, and then the other 2,000 of us were just extras that signed up to be there that day. So there's no insurance. We had to sign waivers that if we get injured,
Uh,
we can't sue. I mean, it's a pretty big deal, right? And so every take, when we did the first take, they said, do whatever you think you would do in this situation. If you would run, run. If you would duck, duck. If you would just sit there frozen, then do that. Whatever you think your reaction would be in real life if this happened, that's what you do. And then we need you to do that every time, whatever that is.
hmm.
So, the gunshots go off, they motion for us to react. And some people did exactly that. They ducked down under the chair. And I think they were people that just didn't want to run. but they, they ducked down under the chair. Most of us just took off, but there's pushing and shoving and trying to hide behind people and trying to push through people. And one take, somebody pushed me and I went kind of flying to the right and almost went headfirst into one of the chairs. And fortunately, just before I hit it, I was able to get my arm up and push it out of the way as I was falling towards it. But it was absolute pandemonium every time. And I mean, people were getting injured on every take, and it was pretty wild. But I think it does, when I think about that in context with this scene in Jaws, it really is an element of what I think would happen, especially because again, water is something that's hard to get out of. It's hard to move quickly. You're not wanting to be the last one. You're not wanting people to push in front of you and leave you behind for the shark to feast on. You don't want to be as accessible to the shark. You want other people behind you, so you're going to want to move quickly, and you can't. So many elements go into a scene like this, but I think this is one of the best shots in the entire film.
Yeah, it's really good. I remember sort of alluding to like how people react to. I remember watching this I think it was like a short documentary, but they were talking about people who survive horrific accidents or whatever they had. And there's certain people that just they'll do what they have to do to get out of the situation. And there was one particular case where a plane landed and it caught on fire on the runway. And they interviewed one of it was a woman that survived, and she said it was surreal. People were getting up and trying to get their stuff out of the overhead compartments, and she goes, I just climbed over the seats to get to the exit, and I got out. And it's like, Gail had a friend who was working like right near the World Trade Center on 9/11, and the elevators were out and they got out of the building, and Gail called her like later that night, and she said, oh, I didn't hang around. I got out of the building, and it's like I was walking across the Brooklyn Bridge when the first tower went down. And it's like, yeah, because some people were hanging around watching, and it's kind of like, you've never seen anything like this, but also it's like, you have a little thought to like the danger here. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and nowadays too, that's such a trend to stand there and film something that's dangerous instead of, I don't know, helping the people that are in danger, or because you got to get it to put up on your TikTok. Hey, look, I got a video of this guy that's being attacked by an alligator. Why don't you help him?
Yeah. And actually there's a scene coming up in this movie that alludes to a little bit something like that as well. So that'll be in the next part, I think. Yeah.
I wonder someday, and maybe in the not too distant future, if that's kind of a potential lawsuit thing where you're not helping somebody that's in danger that you could potentially have saved, but instead you were just standing there filming them be in danger. I wonder if there's going to be like maybe liability suits or something at some point where people are held accountable for those actions.
Well, isn't that the like Good Samaritan law to some sense? And that was the premise of the end of Seinfeld too, because wasn't that they were on trial for that? They watched some guy getting robbed or whatever it was. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I have to think that at some point, if they haven't started those already, at some point that seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, but you never know how you're going to react in a situation. I would like to think that had I been in the area on September 11th, I would like to think that I'm the kind of person that would jump in and try to help people, but I don't know. I mean, I might have just been terrified and just run away from that before anything happened to the building. Fear of, because you don't know, is it going to explode? Is the building going to fall over? I mean, I don't know how I would have reacted. I know how I would like to think I would have reacted, but when the adrenal glands kick in, they kick in and you do what you do. Some people just go with what they know, like trying to get their luggage out of a plane that could explode at any second. Or some people are just like, I got to get out of here before it explodes, and they get to the exit. It's an amazing thing, our reactions. Again, something that sets us apart from animals, because animals are always safety first.
Yeah. And I just, for someone like myself, I came upon this like horrific scene, and I can tell you, I could barely dial 911 on my cell phone. It was like, it took a lot of mental effort to just make those movements. So everybody reacts differently, which
Well,
which, yeah, again, the
there's
scene is very
shock, there's
realistic.
fear, there's panic, there's, I mean, so many emotions get tied into that. And again, all of these things that we're talking about are nothing in life that we have training for. You know, in
Mm,
school you practice for fire drills and that. Okay, well, if the fire alarm goes off, here's how you exit the building. That's
mm,
great. Now, sadly, they're training for if there's gunfire in the school, here's what we do. And I mean, I'm grateful for the training. I'm sad that we need it, but there's no training for, hey, if you're in the water and a shark is starting to
mm.
chew on you, or, you know, if you're on a plane and it could explode, you know, calmly grab your luggage and find the exit, you
Uh,
know, like,
yeah, yeah, they tell you that stuff up front, but
yeah.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, every situation is different too. I mean, you can plan for certain things, but it's all, but here's what's happening, you know, in this moment. It's not a crash landing we're preparing for. The plane is literally on fire and there's only an exit that's so big and there's 50 people trying to get through it, and you know, so many factors that even if you ran drills, you wouldn't necessarily be prepared for that, you know,
yeah,
kind of thing. So at this point, they find out that it's a hoax. They catch the boy. Brody is just, I don't know. At this point, I think there's not much left in him because
yeah,
he's doing everything he can. Now he's got to deal with pranksters on top of everything else.
yeah.
And
I
then,
love the little line too when they catch the kids and the one kid points to his friend. He goes, "He made me do it."
right.
And it's like, and also the mayor too. There's a little bit of a realization from the mayor that maybe it wasn't a good idea for me to tell everybody to go in the water, because now it's like, well, maybe there was no shark, but people got hurt and
Yeah.
it's a disaster,
Right.
really,
Yeah. And I
on the
still
4th of
caused
July.
these
Yeah,
injuries, and now it's on me. Yeah. There is a
yeah,
certain, I think, there is a certain humanity to him, but I think he's, you know, business first. I'll deal with myself. Nobody can see me be upset because I'm the mayor. They need to keep their trust in me. And I get that. But at the
mm,
same point, it only can pile on so much, as we
yeah,
will see very soon. But poor Brody. I mean, I really feel for him at this point because he's just. I mean, what else could he be hit with except a
yeah,
girl yelling shark?
yeah. And it's a sort of classic boy who cried wolf scenario. You've
Hmm.
just been through this thing. People, lose their crap, panic, people get injured or whatever. And then you got someone yelling, shark. And he's like, now what? Like it's just another hoax or whatever.
Right.
And
But
and
here's what I love about this scene is that, okay, so he gets told by his wife that, hey, our kids are over there in the pond where she's saying the shark is, which I'm guessing the pond is just kind of like a little inlet, you know, it's a little,
estuary. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
In
So it
fact,
has access to the ocean, but it's not, you know, it's not like the deep ocean.
yeah.
But again, 3 feet of water, it's all
Yeah.
you need. And this is definitely deeper than 3 feet. But so what I love about this is after Brody realizes his kids may be in danger, and now his adrenaline is kicking in, so he starts running out there. He jumps over the railing and down onto the sand. And let me tell you, as somebody who's walked across the beach for hours, it is not easy to run in soft sand. That is the most horrible place you can try and exercise your body or get any kind of foundation under you. But what I love about this is even after she has his attention, he's running out there. She's still trying to tell people that there's a shark in the pond. She's
Yeah.
still like, shark, shark. Like, we know we're on our way. You can see there's a reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what though, I love the way this scene, everything about the way this scene is filmed, because they had set it up earlier that his son wanted to take the boat
Mhm.
out onto the water, and then he's like, "Do it for your old man. Take it into the pond." The kid's like, "The
Right.
pond's for old ladies or
Mhm.
whatever." Uh, but then, yeah,
The
Michael's
pond's
in the
for Mrs. Kittner.
yeah, yeah, the the pond. So yeah, then Brody's wife says Michael's in the pond. The music tempo starts to slowly increase as Brody's speed starts to slowly increase.
Yes.
And the way one of my favorite shots in the movie is Brody running down those breachway rocks as that music is starting to speed up in intensity. It's like it's like it all fits that slow realization, like maybe this could be real, after I thought, what the hell is this, another hoax?
It's
Yeah,
it's
just
a different version of that tracking shot that we got earlier where that realization hits, just done in a different way. And
mm,
did you experience this, Mark, like I did, where you feel like you're running with him?
yes, yeah. And the musical score, it the tempo gets faster and faster, and it's just a very intense, not, I wouldn't call it a chase thing. It's just a very intense, like you've got to go do something, right now. It's kind of, and yeah, and then yeah, so in the pond they show the boys struggling with like trying to untie a knot or something,
Hmm.
and there's this guy with a heavy New England accent. I think it's a New England
I
accent in
think so,
like a
yeah.
little rowboat,
Mhm.
and he's looking over and he's like, "Hey, you boys all right over there?" And you see the fin coming up, but before that, you see Brody's little boy, again, 70s parenting skills. He's on the beach, like well away from them. He's a tiny kid.
Oh yeah, could have been taken in by any stranger walking by, and no one would have even noticed that he was gone. I mean, he's just a little kid too.
Yeah, and he's like playing in the sand, and it's cute. I think he's singing, "Do you know the Mountain Man,
Oh
the
yeah, the
Mountain Man,"
Muffin Man, yeah.
and you a Muffin Man, and you see the shark like behind him, kind of, or off to the side, like uh, yeah, going by essentially the fins.
The angle
Uh,
that they shot him at, in contrast to the water, I thought was great because
yeah,
he's not in danger, but you kind of want to get the idea that he could be in danger
could
because
be,
he's a
yeah.
vulnerable little child left alone.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that had this been shot on land, the guy in the rowboat to me seems like a child predator. Like he's rowing over
Oh,
towards the kids and he's like, "Hey, you kids having a little problem there? Get in my
yeah.
rickety van. I got a bicycle." Like had this
Yeah.
not been in a boat, I would have totally seen him as a potential villain. Because why is
Yeah.
this guy in a rowboat in the pond? Like it just, doesn't really make any sense why he's there.
Uh, Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. It is a little odd.
Mhm.
And why is he so concerned? They don't look like they're in danger.
Yeah. They're not having a
Um,
fight over the knot. They're not like making a commotion or anything.
no. There doesn't seem to be any immediate danger. So yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Mhm. But there's something else, before we go further, there's something else that really bothers me about this scene. And maybe you have an insight on it. I'd love to know if you do. So, this girl that yells shark saw that there was a shark in the pond, right? Instead of telling the people in the pond to get to safety, she just goes and randomly yells to everyone else that there's a shark in the pond, but she must be near it enough to see it, but doesn't warn the people that are in the pond to get out before she goes and gets help.
Yeah,
Again, get the people off the beach before you put the signs up.
it's unclear where she is. I always thought, but I agree with you. Like, hey, you kids in the boat, there's a shark in the
Right.
pond or
Yeah.
whatever, or she's just screaming bloody murder.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's the way she would react or whatever. Or, hey, creepy guy in the rowboat that's trying to
Right.
help those kids,
Hey, guy
could
who's
you
clearly a pedophile, there's a
yeah.
shark. Yeah, so you're right. The proximity might be important here, and they really don't establish exactly where she's at. But and I guess depending on how far that fin was out of the water, and again, we're talking about a very large shark. Um, it could make sense, but I don't think they really established that enough to give me an understanding of why she didn't at least warn the people that were in danger first. Instead of,
Yeah,
hey, I don't know what you guys can really do about this, but I'm going to scream that there's a shark over there. So,
yeah. Like, it's weird because it seems like Brody travels quite a distance from where he was to
mhm.
get to the pond, but yet he can hear her. Everybody can hear her on the beach after this big commotion. So she's close enough to them for
Yeah.
that. So I don't know.
And they don't show any of the boats going in to
No,
rescue anybody or help either.
and you never see her in relation to the people in the pond. That's where I'm confused as to where she was situated exactly.
Right.
And I often wondered whether she was filmed like separately, because there's like kind of no one around her. She's just like, oh, there's a shark in the pond. It's not like you see the crowd on the beach or anything anywhere. So yeah.
It is an interesting issue because and I'm sure that it probably makes perfect sense, and I'm making a much bigger deal out of it than it really is. But it just seems a very weird thing when you think about what somebody's normal reaction would be, what they would do as a follow-up to seeing that there's a shark. It seems like the first thing you would do is wave your arms or try to get those people's attention and, maybe warn them first. And still scream and shout, absolutely. But it didn't appear that she made any effort to warn or signal the people that were actually in danger. So I always, even as a kid, I thought that was kind of an odd thing to do or not do.
Yeah, and doesn't somebody go over and grab Brody's youngest son off the sand there, just to make sure, because even after all the commotion, then the poor kid's sitting there crying, by himself, basically.
Now that would have been a twist in the story if it actually would have been like a pedophile that came and kidnapped the son and like holding him hostage until he catches the shark, and like you'll get your son back when that shark is dead.
I've heard some women comment on how they loved the way the woman yelling the shark in the pond was dressed. It's like, oh, look at her jeans. She's got all those retro, it's like, patched in all these places.
Oh, yeah.
And she's got the red bandana on or whatever. It's like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's kind of overdressed for a beach day, I guess.
Yeah, I thought so too. Which again, it's like, everybody else is in bathing suits and she's kind of dress. But
and considering how cold it was when they filmed it, she was probably the luckiest one, and she got a cameo in the movie, and she got her own dialogue, which means she could have actually gotten her SAG card for that appearance because she had dialogue. So
imagine getting typecast as the woman that yells
right.
danger in every
just keep screaming, it's a shark in the pond, it's a shark. You'll be fine. Yeah. So the scene in the pond is interesting because the scene that we get is not the scene that they intended to be in the film. The actual scene was much more gory. Again, like the Kittner experience. It was the guy actually grabs Michael and they get dragged through the water together by the shark. But I think honestly, again, not showing it is stronger than showing it. And just showing the remains of his leg hitting the bottom of the water was much more powerful than everything else we got.
Yeah, and it's where you first get a glimpse of the shark. There's an underwater scene where you see it coming up when after the guy's boat got capsized, and then there's a shot from the shore, which is great, which is like the guy screaming or whatever. And then there's one other scene where the shark's mouth is out of the water a little bit. And then it cuts to, you just see water and you're like, oh, what's here? And then the leg floats down, which is, you see the sneaker first and then the thing. I guess obviously not a real actor for that leg.
Right, yeah. That leg is probably very typecast.
He wore like a green bodysuit except for the real leg. I guess you could do that nowadays, right?
Yeah, you probably could. Yeah. But of course, the leg's resume is like can bleed underwater, can float independently. Self-reliant. It was a very well done prosthetic. I mean, whoever modeled that prosthetic obviously does a lot of running because that calf muscle was pretty well built up, I would say. A jogger probably. For an overweight guy sitting in a boat, he certainly gets his exercise. So yeah, it's a very well done scene, and then of course this leads us to obviously everyone else is okay. The shark got its victim. It magically gets away. All the boats that were just down the beach there don't seem to be present at all or helping. There's no um, nothing about them. I mean, they just aren't present in the scene at all. So you really don't know if they were even aware because Brody doesn't call out to anybody. He just takes off,
Yeah.
so you would hope that maybe his deputy or somebody would have been on the
Mm.
walkie with the boats and said, hey, we found the shark, he's over here. Maybe the sonar that Hooper had didn't stretch over to the pond or wasn't where they were at, didn't give them the proximity to know that the shark was over there. I mean, there's a lot of things you could get into, but to not dig into it too deep. There's really nobody helping but Brody.
Yeah, and I almost got the sense that it was like Brody's focus was just on his own child
Yeah.
at that point,
But I
and
was thinking
nothing
his
else.
deputies or somebody would have alerted the boats. Hey, we found the shark that we're all trying to kill. It's over there,
Yeah,
But then maybe
yeah,
they just hadn't reacted or they couldn't get over there fast enough. I mean, there's a lot of plausible explanation for it, but to not have shown any kind of effort from anybody else when you've got all these people that are, there to help with the shark, does feel a little bit weird to me. But again, Brody isolation kind of works for the
yeah.
character.
And again, they sort of I don't know. People who are really geeks probably could draw a diagram of where the pond was, where
Right. Yeah.
how far away all this stuff was. But yeah, but I also love the scene, which is it's sort of odd when I think about it. It's kind of a POV of the shark, yet it's above the water,
Mhm.
where after it kills the pedophile in the rowboat, uh, it swims by Brody's son,
Mhm.
and he but it's above the water, like you
Right.
see, but you got the sense that it's like it's just the sense of where the shark is, like in proximity, and that it doesn't attack the sun, or we don't think so.
Right.
And then the great scene when they drag the sun out of the water, and it's like it lingers so that his bottom half gone. No,
Mhm.
he's full. uh
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and it is a very interesting scene the way that they shot that because you do see the panic in his eyes and you really feel like you are following the tracking of the shark and as we will come to find out in Quint's speech, sharks average 6 people an hour, which the idea of eating people that fast is of course they don't chew, they just swallow and
yeah,
digest. I mean, they chew to an extent, but they pretty much swallow. And the it probably would have been a little quick to bite somebody again. Like you'd have to push the pedophile down a little bit to make room for the next guy.
yeah,
But obviously the shark was satisfied, and then you get that shot of Brody. And I love this shot. Brody looks out towards the open ocean where he is about to head, to go chase this thing down, and just I think coming to grips with having to do that. Although I don't know why, because they're going to hire Quint to do it, so why he feels he needs to be there for it, unless he just wants to know that it happens or whatever, I don't know. But you get that look at him versus the ocean, and again, it's just him versus the world. And I
yeah,
love that shot. I love the music through here because it's kind of a calming music after all this, kind of optimistic, but not really giving anything away. It's just such a well put together scene.
yeah. It's looking through, I guess, the dock or whatever that separates the pond
Mhm.
from the open ocean, which we get a similar kind of shot a little later. And yeah, the music is a little, it's got like what it made me feel, it's like a little bit mysterious, but yeah, I've got to go out there now.
Mhm.
We got to stop this thing for
Yeah.
sure now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially now it's my kids and I
yeah,
have to protect my family. I've got bigger stakes in it than, just this town or whatever.
yeah,
And I think it's a very, very powerful scene because I feel like Brody starts to get a little of his resolve back here,
yes, yeah.
and I think
It's
that gives him the guts to demand to go on the boat with Quint.
yeah. Well, it got real personal.
Yeah.
you know,
Because other than that,
essentially.
what's his motivation for going out on the boat?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, all right,
yeah.
quit. We've got your money. Here's all the things you asked for. Go do your thing.
Yeah, I always the only thing I could say to that is it's like, well, the town is hiring, or the island is hiring Quint to do it. We need someone there to verify, because later, when they're talking about him getting paid, it's like he's getting X amount per day whether he gets the shark or not, and it's
Mhm.
like, so are you just out there drinking beers, like
Right.
what are you doing? So maybe that's it. And then Brody, of course, wants to drag Hooper, because Hooper's the smart guy that knows about sharks and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah, and it certainly is going to make for an incredible dynamic, as far as like a three-piece actor group for a film. I think to this day, this is some of the best stuff ever shot, as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned.
yeah,
Um, but I think this is a good stopping point
yeah,
for
yeah.
the
I just
episode. Mhm.
Yeah, I sort of think just that the next scene, just so how
Do you want to cover the
Brody
scene and then
in the
maybe break
hospital.
where? Oh, the hospital.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I forgot
yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cover
let's
the
do that.
hospital and then we'll break, because it really is two halves of the movie right
Yeah.
there. I think, but yeah. So so Brody, his son is in shock essentially,
Mhm.
and then they next cut to the hospital, and the son's being, I guess, wheeled down the hallway, and from the conversation, the mother talking to the doctors, or the nurse, just says, oh, it's mild shock, he can go home in the morning. Nowadays you'd be kicked out in 10
Oh,
minutes
yeah.
or he might not have even been admitted at all.
Are you
um,
kidding? You get an appendectomy and they've got you on your feet 2 hours later walking
yeah,
around and you're out the next morning.
there's one thing I noticed. It's funny. One of the, I guess, obviously extras, or maybe they actually filmed it in a real hospital, but one of the guys pushing the gurney makes the bad mistake of looking like directly at the camera
Oh, does he?
as they're going by. I've also heard people commenting, Ellen Brody's asking the kid what he wants, and he's like, my cars or something. And it's like, how about ice cream? And he's like, she's like, well, what flavor? And he goes, coffee. And it's like, what kid eats coffee ice cream? Particularly in the 70s, it seemed kind of
Right, yeah.
kind of odd, or
I didn't even
whatever.
realize we had coffee ice cream back then.
Yeah, I remember it. I think I actually liked it as a kid or whatever, but
I remember, I don't know if you guys had it where you grew up, but we had Blue Moon ice cream, which was it was a
mhm.
different substance. I mean, it had a different consistency to ice cream, and then from that they made Superman ice cream, which was more like clay than ice cream. It had such
Oh
a
God.
bizarre consistency. It was still frozen, but it had
Uh,
a really different consistency than ice cream did to it. I loved it. It was one of my favorite things as a kid, but it was different.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But this
yeah,
is an important scene because this is the scene where the mayor finally gets to the point where he's just broken down to shambles because his kids were on that beach too. And
yeah,
now it's
yeah,
real to him.
yeah. And he also feels guilt that Brody's son is in the hospital. I mean, yeah, it's basically, as you said, the mayor's finally broken here, and it's the last time we see him too,
Mhm.
essentially, because he's not really needed for the plot
Yeah,
anymore.
right.
Um, but basically, Brody, although he's still trying to hold on to, Brody's like, you got a pen because I want to hire Quint,
Mhm.
to kill the shark, a contractor. And the mayor's just like mumbling, like, I was working in acting in the best interest of the town,
Yeah.
and then maybe, and then he's like, maybe August. And Brody's like, these people think you're the mayor of Shark City, that you want the
Right.
beaches open,
Only
and
because he
he's,
said the beaches are going to be open.
yeah,
Like, that would be
and
why.
he's smoking a cigarette in the hospital, which is a great 70s scene
Oh yeah.
as well.
What a
And
what a could we just side this and go, what a different world we live in now.
we do.
I think we talked about this on another episode. It might have been when I was on your show where we talked about the how you would go to a restaurant and they would ask you smoking or non, and you would have to walk through the smoking section to get to the non-smoking section, which was ventilated. And
Yeah.
You were really just on the other side of a wall that had open doorways, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you could smoke in airports, you could smoke on airplanes. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the world was so different in the early 70s.
Yeah, you could smoke in hospital rooms.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard stories of people that were dying of lung cancer, and their last wishes is like, I want a cigarette, and they'd rig up a contraption so that they could, have it in their
Jeez.
mouth and smoke.
Well,
Yeah,
nothing to lose at that point, I guess.
yeah, 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 yeah. Why not? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
obviously I needed to be calmed down a lot in my life, and I've got lung cancer now, and wow.
yeah,
I do think though that again, total testament to the actor here, the delivery, the performance that we're getting. He's so believable at being in this almost catatonic state of just this is all my fault, and finally everything dawning on him. I don't know that it went as far in his mind because I don't think he mentioned it, but I could have prevented that Kittner's boy's death,
yeah,
if he
yeah.
went
Like,
back that far in it, or just thinking about, people could have died today because of me. I don't know really where he went in the character's mind with it, but certainly everything that happened today was your damn fault, and you're finally coming to terms with that.
yeah, like it's whereas before when he was making these denials and stuff, there was a bit, although maybe he didn't, you sensed he didn't believe it himself. There was still conviction enough there, and now he's just mumbling, "I was working in the town's best interest." He's trying to justify his actions up
Yeah.
to that
But
point.
I feel like he's trying to justify it to himself and doesn't
Right.
even realize Brody's there at that point.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then the great thing that he signs the contract without looking at it.
Mhm.
I think the sound engineering was a little overdone with how loud the pen was when he was signing
Right.
it, but I think they sort of had to do that and but almost what was cool is the sound is like just scribbling, like he just like he doesn't even want, it's like he's fighting himself, right?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to sign this, but I'm not going to look at it.
Mhm.
And just, it's like that's out of my hands as well,
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah. So
What if
what
that
a
was
great,
Harry Shearer that wrote that pen sound?
yeah. And then it's just, that's the end of the mayor, right?
Yeah.
Brody, he had pulled that curtain, that hospital curtain back, and then he pulls it back and he's just walking away. The mayor's in his wake and he's not looking back,
I just want to
which is
know.
ends the half of the movie. It's
It
great. Yeah.
does. I just want to know where Brody got the contract. I mean, I'm assuming that he kept it in the car for some reason, because they would have gone from the beach right to the hospital.
Mm.
So where did he pull that contract from unless he kept it in the car for some
Well, unless
reason?
he called his office somehow and had
Hmm.
him send it over. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never wondered about that, but yeah, he had it handy.
I spend a
Unless
lot of
he's
time
been,
alone, Mark. My
or
brain just goes where it
yeah,
goes.
or maybe behind the scenes, it's like he's been trying to get this guy to sign the contract since Quint scratched the chalkboard, and he just,
Right. Yeah.
he's not listening to him or whatever.
Well, really,
So,
except for the very, next couple of scenes, there's really no one else in the film except Brody Quentin Hooper.
yes.
And I think it's really interesting to have all these people, all these colors and characters and people to care about. You got a family you're dealing with. And then the last half of the movie, it's three guys that carry the entire thing from there.
Yeah, it's a really stark kind of two-act movie. I mean,
Hmm.
there's like sub acts, I would say, but
Right.
it's definitely two halves.
Hmm.
No question about that. The tone and everything else. But again, the pace of this movie is also what makes it great. They
Yeah.
grab you right off the bat with the first victim.
Hmm.
Then it's just, they're introducing the characters, but it's kind of frantic with everything kind of going on up to then.
Yeah.
um and it peaks at this point where, as you said, somehow Brody now, yeah, it becomes personal for him. The mayor no longer is a factor because he's just time and time again, and finally to the point where he's broken and he's out of the picture. So now it's up to Brody, get the contractor, let's go out and do this thing.
Well, the
Yeah.
mayor's whole point in the film was to be the roadblock, and now he's not
Yeah.
the roadblock anymore. I mean, really, you've got three antagonists. You've got the shark, you've got the mayor, and you've got Quint. So you're just constantly going back and forth between them. But I think the mayor has served his purpose because now there's nothing he needs to stand in the way of.
Right. He can't anymore. I
Yeah.
could. Can you imagine if like he still was trying to stand in the way? It wouldn't. It
He's
would.
standing at the dock just going, "You're not boarding this boat."
Do you have the leg of the pedophile? Because I didn't.
Yeah. You don't have the leg,
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't imagine anything else that would have, even following his story, to just kind of follow up on his character and have a scene just showing him, holding his head in his hands and taking
No.
responsibility any more than he are. Like, there's really no scene he could have had that would have given him any additional value. He doesn't really bother me until we get to Jaws 2, where he seems to have forgotten this whole scene has even happened, and he's back
Yeah.
to being the roadblock that he was before. And I take issue with that because he seems to have just forgotten this whole conundrum was even a real thing, that people actually died, that he could have gotten people killed, and he's just back to being the roadblock that he was for 90% of his screen time here. But I think he served this movie well, and I think here this is a great exit point from him because he offers no additional value to the movie at this point.
Yeah. He's become irrelevant.
Mhm.
It's a one word thing. I will say I didn't mention this before, but don't even talk to me about the sequels.
Okay.
I've never even seen all of any of them. I
Really?
think I saw a little of Jaws 2, and for part of the reason, like one of the many reasons I don't like it was you just mentioned it. Like the characters, it didn't flow from the first movie. And I think there are certain movies that are bookends so perfectly that you ruin them with
Mhm.
sequels. And that's why I won't watch them. I don't want the movie ruined by, oh, really? The mayor didn't learn his lesson? No,
Mhm.
nope.
You know
Jaws
what?
stands alone to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can very much appreciate that, and all I can tell you is that I thought Jaws 2 was pretty good. I thought it didn't have the character dynamic that this one does because you don't
Mhm.
have the three people. I mean, the reason that the magic of this film really is the second half.
Mhm.
But I didn't buy the premise of it at all. Problem with the mayor, and it just didn't have the magic. It was a continuation of the story, but it didn't have the charm and dynamic that this one did. As the sequels go on, it just gets worse. I mean,
Yeah.
Jaws 3 was like, hey, we have 3D technology. We can give people 3D glasses and it'll be so much more intense. But it's literally as if you took your model that you showed me earlier and you just took it and just went like this and just moved it closer. And it's not moving, it's not changing expression. The gills aren't, vibrating or
Yeah.
anything. You're literally just taking a frozen thing and moving it closer as if that's a realistic portrayal of a shark. Jaws: The Revenge,
I get them all. I get all the sequels mixed up because I don't even think they're relevant. So like
Jaws: The Revenge is the return of Ellen Brody, and the actual
and
actress, plays Ellen again, and
didn't
she's,
Michael Caine, was he in that one? Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
reluctantly, but
I
but Michael Caine's response to being in this movie was, "I bought my mother a nice house with the paycheck."
Yeah, I always remember Billy Crystal was hosting the Oscars one year, and Michael Caine was nominated for something, and Billy Crystal did this musical number in the beginning. He was talking about all the nominees, and then he said something about Michael Caine. He's so great, he's fantastic and everything, but why'd you have to do Jaws 4? And then Michael Caine won. He gets up to the podium, and the first thing he says is, "I liked Jaws 4."
We were talking about evolution of animals and that earlier, and according to Jaws 4, sharks have now grown vocal cords. They can scream, which is
Yeah,
interesting, and they don't like it when you shock them.
yeah. And they could take down a plane or a helicopter. I forget which one it
Oh, that was
was.
Jaws 2.
Jaws 2. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's another whole thing. I mean, it went off the rails. The first movie is such magic and perfection. I understand the concept of a film studio or whoever the rights holders are wanting to capitalize on that, wanting to make a bigger series out of it, like Halloween or Friday the 13th or whatever. I get that. But if you're going to take a movie, the first blockbuster in history, the first movie also that was put on Laserdisc was Jaws. And you're going to take something this big and you're going to follow it up, man, you got to bring it. You really
Yeah.
have to bring it. And I don't think there's much anybody could have done to recreate the magic that they found in this movie. I mean, you could have a great script, but without the dynamic of the cast, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that most people are doing nowadays is just recreating the same movie with different people and calling it a sequel. When really, okay, so you're going to put three more people in a boat. You're going to have a salty sea captain. You're going to have a know-it-all young kid, and you're going to have a nervous police chief. And you're going to find new characters to cast that fill those roles, make a new movie, and call it the next Jaws. I mean, that's how they do things these days. Gladiator was another movie for me that, from beginning to end, absolutely loved it. And I'm not a big fan of period pieces, but I love that movie. The score, the whole arc, everything in that movie is just perfection to me. And I finally got myself to watch Gladiator 2, and I went, eh,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, like so perhaps not even that bad, but just not nearly. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's only, I'll tell you what, there's only two sequels in my opinion that I think were equal or better than the originals. What would you think they were? They're big movies.
Okay, I will go with Empire Strikes Back.
You got number one
Okay,
or number
and
two,
then,
and chronologically.
boy, a sequel. I'm not going to say Grease 2. I
No,
guess it's
definitely.
probably not that. I would ask if it's a movie Pete's seen, but I already know the answer is going to be no.
Yeah.
Probably didn't even see the first
It,
one.
it'd be funny if Pete saw like sequels, but I think he has said something like that. Like I saw Jaws 2 or something, I didn't like it. And I was like, oh, what do you yeah,
So I never enjoyed the first
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah.
Boy, I don't know. Can you give me an
Godfather,
era? Oh,
Godfather 2.
Godfather. Yeah.
Godfather 2 and Godfather 1, boy, that's a close one, but I really lean towards Godfather 2. And yeah, Empire Strikes Back, just
I
yeah,
think by the
yeah.
time they got to Godfather 3, though, I remember not really enjoying that one as much as the
No, that
first
wasn't,
two.
yeah. Most people don't like
Yeah,
the
it's
three.
again just like you got something great, just let it go,
Yeah.
you know.
And the endings to certain things, like I although I don't think the movies were particularly bad, but the Matrix series, I thought that first movie ended so perfectly that
Mhm.
anything trying to continue it ruined it,
Yeah.
for me. So yeah,
And
yeah,
then you get like in horror movies, they tend to take one action too far, right? Like you've got your resolve and everything, and then they try to throw in one more scare, or really the killer's not dead, or whatever. I remember they do that in like Stephen King adaptations too, where they take that liberty and go, "All right, we're gonna make you feel calm. We have a resolution. Oh wait, no, one more scare. All right, we got you."
yeah. Was
You
it
know,
the end of Carrie like that? Doesn't like she
Carrie, yeah.
visits a friend's grave and then it's not over. Yeah,
Right. Carrie was like that. Misery was like that. And it was, I
yeah,
mean, in the book, in all fairness, in the book, Paul Sheldon's saying, I still see her everywhere I go. And then you see her working in the restaurant where she's dead, but it's just like they just have to go one step too far. And I'm the kind of person that for some reason, I want to know what happens to people after the tragedy.
mm.
So, like in a horror movie, hey, you just watch your 13 friends just get killed by a serial killer and you survive somehow.
Yeah.
What do you do tomorrow? Do you go to school? Do you go to work? Like how do you deal with your life now? You still have responsibilities, but you have to deal with all your friends just got slaughtered. And like I want to know what happens to those people after that. Like what happened to the mayor? I mean, obviously we know because we have Jaws too, but like right after this breakdown, how did you come back to being a dick again?
Yeah, yeah. That would be an interesting concept though, like one of these teen slasher flicks where it's like now the guy's in his 40s and 50s and he's had a lifetime of, perhaps not even dealing with the trauma, but his life is a mess. And,
Right. Yeah.
you
They
know,
they did that in the Shining update, Doctor Sleep, because it's Danny as an adult.
Mm.
and what what his life has been like and all that. And I think that was very well done. I That's when I want to go back and read the book at some point. But
Mm.
yeah, it is rare that you get to find out unless it's a sequel. But a lot of times in the sequel, it's like they refer to events, but they don't seem to have affected most people for the long term. Whereas I would think, you're never going to trust anybody again. You're always going to be looking over your shoulder the rest of your life. Like that's got to have a huge
Yeah.
impact on you. And in sequels and movies, they're like, oh yeah, there was that thing that happened at the camp, and
Yeah.
it's just like a story, like it becomes an old wives' tale. And I find that very unrealistic in a lot of the films too.
Yeah, like I know, like I said, I don't think I've watched any of the sequels all the way through, but I know Brody says I don't want to go through that hell again. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, at least that's realistic,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know?
that was Jaws too. And it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, this has not left him what he had to
yeah,
deal with,
yeah,
even though it's 4 years later.
yeah,
He's triggered by a camera that's recovered, and there's a picture on it that he believes is the eye of a shark. And he
yeah.
takes it to the committee, which the mayor's a part of, and the police chief, the guy who played Stefano on Days of Our Lives, who is Jennifer Aniston's. Oh no, that's Victor Kiriakis. I'm sorry. No, he played Stefano. Not. I'm getting two characters confused. And he is part of the committee. He's a real estate developer who works with Brody's wife, trying to sell real estate on the island because that's her actual job. And they're all trying to deny that this is a shark in the photo, and like it doesn't prove anything. And he's like, I'm not doing this again. You better deal with it because I'm not. And of course, he does,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
circumstance. But yeah, it's an unrealistic plot and solution as
yeah,
opposed to this one, which I think this is reasonable. I think this potentially really could happen. I mean, it's unlikely that a shark that size would get that close inland because it would probably beach itself at a fairly 4 or 5 feet because this thing is big.
yeah,
It's not it's tall for a shark, so 3 feet of water, it's definitely out of the water at that
yeah,
point.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's slightly unrealistic, but the setup, the mayor's responses, the idea of them going out to, like, I think all of this is very realistic.
Yeah, yeah, no, I do too, and just the portrayals, the way the characters are written, the ancillary characters,
Mhm.
the extras, all that stuff that they threw in. Yeah,
Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into a couple episodes and I'm going to air this Saturday and Sunday. So the first part of what we've recorded today, Mark, will come out on Saturday. The second part will come out on Sunday, and then sometime let's do the second half of the movie. And there's so much to cover. I feel like we could do another 4 hours on just the last half of the movie alone.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's a mini podcast. I think we've turned this into,
Yeah.
but it's such an iconic film. 50 years later, people are still think it's one of the greatest films of all time.
Well, I
So,
think the fact that they talk about this movie in film school, this film is referred to in so many ways, not just in memes and things like that, but people talk about the shots, the cinematography, the pacing, and you don't really realize how long this movie is because it's so well paced. You
yeah,
get your moments where you can breathe, but even those go by pretty quickly and you still got a tension. There's always this little bit of tension in the back of your neck through this whole movie because you know something's coming.
mm,
And between that and the score being so iconic, and I mean, all the pop culture references, I mean, this is such a huge piece of history in our lifetime
mm,
that it's understandable why it's still talked about and referred to as one of the greatest films of all time. And let's remember, this was literally the first physical blockbuster where people lined up all the way around a city block to stand in line waiting for people to watch a 2.5 hour movie
yeah,
several times before you could get up there to see it. I mean, the idea of standing out there all day
hmm,
waiting for a long movie to be and remember, we didn't have the number of cinemas that we have today either. So it's
yeah.
not like you had a lot of choices. You weren't waiting for this to come out on VHS because VHS didn't exist yet. I mean, when you really put it in the perspective of when this came out,
It
whole different world.
it, you know, I don't know how widely it was released at first, but probably big cities at first too. So
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily in your town, but there was a
Yeah.
buzz about it.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, just yeah. I mean, I vividly remember the buzz about it too. And it's like, yeah, I was
Yeah.
9 years old. I probably was too young to go see it, to be honest with you, but
Mhm.
so glad I did.
Yeah,
Uh,
seeing it on the big screen, and I'm so
uh,
tempted to go to one of those screenings that they do on the water where you sit in the inner tube, and
yeah,
I'm so tempted to do that because I think the experience would be pretty amazing, especially at nighttime where you can't see in the water, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But let me ask you this as we wrap up this episode, Mark, seeing it as young as you did, what do you feel it had an impact on you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I, you know, as a family or whatever, didn't visit the beach that, often, but I do, we go a few times every summer, and I
Mhm.
do remember just that feeling of going in the water, and it's like you don't really know what's under here, do you?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you sort of have a feeling that, well, this is unlikely, but nevertheless, and you know, a kid gets killed in the movie. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, that didn't happen like all the time, so it's like you identified with that a little
Mhm.
bit. Yeah,
That's
so
true. Yeah.
definitely an impact. And
Mhm.
I just, the intensity, it was intense. You
Yeah.
came out of that theater kind of out of breath.
Mhm.
And you know, I don't think up until that point there were a lot of moments where people like cheered at the climactic scene, but
Right.
the tension built so much that that was a release in itself. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. I wish I had seen this in, in an actual theater and I could have seen other people's reactions to it. I remember my parents went and saw the original Halloween in the theater, and my mom said that people would like run up the aisles and out the theater doors screaming because it affected them that much. And I
mm,
remember even going to see the Blair Witch at the midnight showing, and I lived right near a forest with a little lake, and it was a foggy night. I mean, you couldn't have set up a better night for me to go see this movie. And they oversold the theater. There were people sitting on the floor. There were people standing along the wall, which I mean isn't a fire hazard or anything. And at the end of the film, the lights come up and no one says a word, and everyone's just kind of frozen. And then this
yeah.
woman goes, "Get me the hell out of here."
Oh,
And
gee.
everybody just jumps up and they're pushing each other out the door.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I've never seen anything like this. And this
Wow,
is in a
yeah,
time where we're already becoming desensitized to horror because we've had so much of it. In
yeah.
1973 or 1974,
75. Yeah,
or it was 75 when it came
75,
out. Yeah.
75. Yeah,
There wasn't preparation for a movie like this.
yeah, yeah. I always say, I just in terms of movies, if I mention just a few of them, it's like in the 70s we got The Godfather, we got Jaws, and we got Star Wars. I
Yeah.
mean, name another decade, at least in our lifetime, that we had, groundbreaking, game-changing films.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think it's partially because people had to really work for it back then. I mean, now you
yeah,
depend so much on special effects and, all kinds of things to make your movie. I mean, Sharknado looks incredibly impressive at times, and at other times it looks really cheesy, but it's designed to be campy. You
right.
look at Jurassic Park, and, some of it's practical, some of it's CGI, and you're like, this world is so believable. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
feel like this is actually happening and they're just shooting it on film, and
yeah,
now we've got another one coming out, I think this week. And I don't, I've only seen the trailer of it, but again, it looks incredibly impressive. And I think it's easier to do it now. Back then, you had to depend more on your story. You had to really tell a good story, and you had to have people that could act it out, instead
mm,
of you could do kind of a lackluster performance and still balance it out with other elements and get away with not
yeah,
having certain things. I feel like it's just easier to get there now, whereas back then you had to work for all the elements. I mean, look at all the models that they had to build for Star Wars and all the
Mm,
paintings that they did for the backgrounds. And I mean, they really had to work to make that film happen.
mm.
And nowadays, it's guys sitting at a computer drawing it all.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh well,
but you're
look at
right, that
us.
was a great decade.
Yep.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Mark. This has been absolutely wonderful so far. I cannot wait to continue this. For you guys, this part will air on Sunday. So I hope you enjoyed yesterday's. Go check out the 70s Weekly Countdown with Mark and Pete. It's a great show. I loved being on the July episode. They got a whole slew of episodes in the backlog that you can enjoy as well. Check out Mark and I and Pete and various other people that have been guests on the Deep Purple podcast. Check out Deep Purple Smoke on the podcast. Uriah Heep, the Magician's podcast, is in transit to another distributor, so it is off the air for the moment, but we'll be back soon. In the meantime, almost all of those episodes are on YouTube that you guys can enjoy. Obviously, all of my stuff is on my website at www.scotthaskin.com. I also have a link to all of Mark's locations as well. Check them out. You guys have a great rest of your Sunday or whenever you're listening to this, and we'll be back with the conclusion of Jaws. Cheers.